Good morning, everyone. I'm Valerie Jarrett, Senior Advisor to the President and Chair of the White House Council on Women and Girls. I'd like to welcome you all to the White House. This is the second time that we have held the President's Interagency Task Force to monitor and combat trafficking in persons here at the White House. And in the course of this last year, since our last meeting, I've had the pleasure of working with each and every one of the agencies represented around the table in your teams as we work to both end trafficking and make sure that those who have survived it have the services that they need to restore their lives and return strong and resilient and be able to reach their dreams. Many of the survivors are women and girls, and so as chair of the council, this is particularly important to me, to struggle to figure out new and innovative ways to avoid the atrocities of human trafficking. But first, I'd like to begin by emphasizing that sexual assault is intolerable in any forms. And I want to begin the meeting by mentioning sexual assault in the military, because of course, we have to work on getting our own house in order. Just yesterday, President Obama met with the top military leaders, including, of course, Secretary Hagel and his entire national security team, to focus on what we can do to make it clear that sexual assault is a crime and it will not be tolerated, particularly within our own military. It was a productive meeting, and moving forward, it is clear that both the White House, the national security team, and our military leaders are determined to make this a first priority. The only way we are going to maintain a world-class military is if this is not a side issue, but it is a central issue to the core function of our military. Last week, Tina Shin, who was just joining us, who is the Executive Director of the White House Council on Women and Girls, and I hosted a meeting with a number of senators and House members, bipartisan, focusing on legislative strategies to help provide the military with the tools that they need to crack down on this crime as well. So we will be exploring both legislative and executive solutions. So now let me turn to trafficking. Over the last year, I've had the opportunity to meet with many survivors of human trafficking. I visited a center called Fair Girls right here in D.C. They have several offices, but one of them right here. And spending time with these girls, many of them who have suffered atrocities beginning at a young age and endured them for years, are benefiting from the program at Fair Girls. FAIR stands for Free, Aware, Inspired, and Restored, which I think is a perfect acronym for what the services that they're providing to these young women. And it's remarkable to see the progress in just a year that these girls have made. I visited the center's annual celebration gala just last week, and many of the young girls that were so fragile a year ago are already beginning to thrive. And so it reminds me each and every day of the very important work that we are all doing to address this issue. Last September, President Obama devoted his entire address at the Clinton Global Initiative to the evil, that's what he called it, the evil of human trafficking. And his message that day was simple, and I quote, "To the survivors, we see you, we hear you, we insist on your dignity, and we share your belief that if just given the chance, you will forge a life equal to your talents and worthy of your dreams." The work that we do each and every day reinforces that very important message. And we've made a tremendous amount of progress in this last year, and so I'm looking forward to today's presentations because you'll have a chance to talk not just about what we've accomplished, which is important, but also the road ahead and what we're going to continue to do to stay vigilant on this issue as we prevent trafficking, protect victims, prosecute offenders, and partner with civil society, both here at home as well as around the world. And so I look forward to hearing from each of you. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you, Valerie. It's good to see all our colleagues here, and thanks very much for this opportunity. As I look back a year ago when we met, and to consider all the stuff that we've accomplished since then, I feel quite proud of that, but also very proud of the work of the team around here, and in particular our colleagues at State, but not only. Everybody's got a piece of this action. Obviously, the President, as he laid out in his speech at the UN, remains very committed to fighting human trafficking. There is, as with much of our agenda, as we open the second term here, renewed energy on this topic and particularly since the President tasked us as this working group or this task force last year to identify administrative actions that we can take internationally and domestically to combat trafficking, things that we can do of our own accord and with our own authorities. So over the past year, the executive branch has accomplished important goals. Let me just name a couple of those. One is the presidential executive order to strengthen our federal government's existing zero-tolerance policy on human trafficking in government contracting. And that's currently being implemented by the development of regulations here in OMB to address overseas contracting, agency training, and interagency analysis. Two, the development of a comprehensive cross-government victim services strategic action plan that outlines additional steps the government would take in the next 5 years to better protect and support victims. The plan has been released for public comment and will be finalized by September of this year. Third, several public-private partnerships to increase services to survivors here and abroad and to provide cutting-edge technology tools for survivors and law enforcement. Let me in particular underscore the work of Todd Park and the interagency technology gurus in this regard. The briefing that Todd gave the President in the Oval Office, I think, was quite not only quite compelling, but it had a nice byline or a nice top line, which said we're going to use the technology to get the bad guys. So I thought that was pretty good. Lastly, the launch of two new initiatives, the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Campus Challenge and Made in a Free World, both efforts to spur awareness on college campuses and among consumers and suppliers throughout the supply chain. So the goal of today's meeting is to recommit the executive branch to continuing to act and think and act broadly and creatively to eliminate human trafficking. I think we've made a good head start on that, and this is a good opportunity for us to continue it. So I want to just say thanks to the whole team for that effort. And Mr. Secretary, I think we can go to you next.
Thank you very much, Dennis. First of all, Valerie, thank you for your chairmanship and leadership on issues with respect to women and girls, and particularly this issue. I appreciate your convening us here at the White House, and Dennis, thank you very much for getting over here and taking time to be part of this effort. As we all know, we're kind of running under a very tight clock here, and this is a terrific opportunity to have a kind of summary view of everything and a sharing of what everybody is doing. And in the conglomerate, there's really a very powerful message here. I'm thrilled to chair this for the first time. As everybody knows, we have a terrific support team at State who've been working on this, led by our good ambassador, Luis D. Zabaka, and thank you for your efforts, Luis. This is an issue that I first kind of came across when I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and I was just stunned by the stories, the examples of the evil that Valerie just referred to and the President talked about. It is nothing less than the most predatory, extraordinarily abusive, modern slavery that you could conceivably imagine. And the stories, the instances of young girls, some on occasion less than in their teens, but most often in teens and upwards, women, the degradation, the depravity, not just in terms of sex traffic and sex trade, but also labor, in the labor market. And there's so many good efforts that are going on here. So what we hope to achieve, what we will achieve through this sharing, is the telling of a story that the world really needs to understand. And I think America should be very, very proud of the efforts that the President has put together and led, and which are manifested at this table, where you have cabinet secretaries of major agencies of our government and other agencies that have all come together in, frankly, one of the better examples of coordination and accomplishment. So I think there's much to be proud of here. Everybody here understands the impact of human trafficking. I mean, it tears apart communities, tears apart families, challenges rule of law, not to mention that it is a moral obscenity. And we have seen a recent example in a city in America where people for 10 years, 3 women were held in captivity. It can happen in people's neighborhoods, and does. And it happens in all kinds of different ways. I learned a lot about this when I was a prosecutor, and I began one of the first victim witness assistance programs in America because so many people were being victimized twice, once by the crime and then again by the system. And what we're doing here, I think, is proving that we can push the proverbial rock up the hill and actually get it over the top and make good things happen. The Obama administration has, I can say this because I'm new to it, put together an unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented effort that is represented at this table. And so the stories today of what each agency is doing, and we invite, obviously, our live stream audience to sort of really focus in on it, is a tremendous story of governance actually working and of people achieving their goals. And while there would just be an encapsulated snapshot of what that is, I think it's one that tells a terrific story. This is the concern of law enforcement, but it's also the concern of diplomacy, of healthcare providers, of immigration officials, of all government, and that's why this is such a representative table. The only way to ensure an adequate outcome in this kind of a challenge is to have the kind of cross-government, holistic approach that is represented here. So I want to start my chairmanship by pledging my complete commitment to our whole-of-government approach and ask that every single one of you just continue to champion this in the way that you have been. All of us understand also that government alone can't do this. We just can't do this alone, which is why one of the awards we're giving today is to the private sector, because we recognize the criticality of the private sector being involved, all employers, all components of the private sector particularly. So all the stakeholders have to come to this initiative, and we're going to do everything in our power to reach out to them, and we will support new approaches, new practices to spur action and accelerate our progress on this issue, which, though considerable, every single one of us knows 27 million women, girls, people, not always women and girls, incidentally, as we know. In the fishing industry and other parts of the world, people are just pressed in as they were hundreds of years ago to forced labor. So there's an enormous challenge for all of us. America, under the Obama administration and the president's leadership, is setting a moral example here, a standard of applying conscience to governance, which I think really stands out. It's our pleasure here today, and I'm excited to present the first ever presidential award for extraordinary efforts to combat trafficking in persons. And I'd like to welcome Florrie Burke and Tammy Lee Stanek, who joined us today, and ask them if they'd stand and come up and join me at the podium. Florrie Burke has been a pioneer in this movement from its very earliest days, and I talked a moment ago about victim-centered approach, putting the rights and needs of victims first when you deal with this kind of crime. The fact that we do that really is because of Florrie and her leadership. Over the past 15 years, she has been working tirelessly as an advocate in the field to protect victims and help survivors get their lives back on track. And at the same time, she's trained service providers and first responders around the world in order to recognize and respond to this crime. So I could say, without any question, Florrie, you are a hero, true hero. We are grateful for your remarkable leadership, and it's our honor to be able to present you with this first ever presidential award. Would you read the citation, Mr. Ambassador?
for her sustained dedication and unparalleled leadership in combating modern slavery through the development and delivery of comprehensive services, the empowerment of survivors to move from slavery to independence, and the transformation of policy to eradicate all forms of human trafficking. Ms. Flory Burke.
Well done. Flory? I'll just explain to her the snaps on that are very hard. Sort of hoping that it stays, you know. Tammy Lee Stanek is a vice president for corporate affairs for the global hospitality and travel company Carlson. Carlson is an amazing company in Minneapolis, in 150 countries, 2,200 restaurants and hotels, and they have been an amazing leader, and fighting human trafficking is just part of the way that they do business, and it has been for a long time. We're proud of that. Modern slavery is an enormous issue within the tourism industry, and it has been for a long time. If you work for Carlson, though, you have the tools to recognize human trafficking when you see it, and that's because of their proactive leadership in order to make sure that their employees do that. They are pushing their corporate partners to deal with this problem, and they are exactly the kind of private sector leader that we need in order to win this fight. So thank you very, very much. Would you step forward, and it'd be my honor to present you with this recognition, the Presidential Award for Extraordinary Efforts for Combating Trafficking.
Thank you, Secretary Kearing.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.